I am having a moral dilemma. I am a CEO of a nonprofit that just passed the $10 million mark in revenue, and I've been here 15 years. Yay! I've been here 15 years and have navigated several challenges along the way, like many nonprofits do. I am confident that I'm kicking butt and that my years of hard work and long hours are starting to pay off. The board just voted to give me a merit-based bonus that is 20% of my salary. I am already very competitively paid and have no issues with my compensation. This bonus feels excessive to me. Ironically, I awarded a similar-sized merit bonus to one of my staff members who has been by my side every step of the way. He has definitely earned it, and I'm supportive of this type of a bonus for him. Is the type of bonus I'm getting appropriate, or should I raise a red flag to the board that this is too high?
Oh, I love this question. This is like the success is blinding me.
I know, right?
How do we do that?
Some people are
Right?
probably sitting there cursing you a little bit as they hear this, going,
Yeah.
"Oh my God!" No,
Like,
just kidding. They're not cursing you, but they're just a
probably
little jealous.
It's probably a nonprofit about puppies or something.
Yes. Exactly.
So it's a super, super interesting question. And I totally get the moral dilemma. And I think I have an answer for you. So one of the things that the board is responsible for is determining the executive director's pay. That's like their only job, or it should be like one of their only jobs, right? So I don't know that I want to take that away from them. I don't think that and I also don't know that, and a part of it's probably why it's the moral dilemma is that like you earned it, right? You did the hard work, and you're not necessarily getting to share it all with staff. And it might look, I know it does when the executive director gets a big bonus, but everybody else doesn't. Like it does feel to staff like, well, that's not cool, right? Like we did the work. They just went to lunch. So I get the resistance to want to accept it, right? So one of the things you can consider is, not letting the board, not challenging the board's authority in deciding that you deserve more pay, but nothing prevents you from donating it back to your staff or donating back to the nonprofit in general. So if they give you a 20% bonus, you can immediately write a check to your nonprofit for that exact amount, or that exact amount less taxes, to be honest, because you're going to get more taxes on that one. That just is a charitable gift directly to your organization to show to your staff that they paid me more, but what just happened is that money just got funneled right back to general operating and the mission. It's something that I've always liked to do for the nonprofits that I work for. One of the things that I always do is make sure that if there's a board give policy, like that I, as a staff member, am also giving at that board give policy, because it gives me a lot more moral authority in a board meeting that, look, you're giving $10,000 a year. I'm giving $10,000 a year, right? So that makes us even on the board donation scale, right?
Yeah.
So don't sass me. I've anteed in. So you need to pay attention to what I'm saying. So, I mean, I use that for my own personal moral authority, but I think this is a good opportunity to sort of join that club, is to say, if they're going to give you 20%, just funnel that right back into the mission of the organization. I think that might solve your moral dilemma. And it also maybe it doesn't steal the fire from the board for this thank you gift they're giving you for doing a great job.
I love that. I love your point about that, because I think sometimes people, think they're doing something good by turning down the bonus. And that's actually just, in some ways, I think you're sending the wrong message, particularly because there might be a time. It's great that they're thinking about how do they reward you for the performance and the hard work you've done. And I love that they're looking at that. And I also guess I would encourage you, because this is only a bonus, so it's a one-time thing and not an actual permanent salary increase. I think that also might help it feel a little more digestible from a standpoint of, knowing that it's not a forever thing. It's a one-time thing. And it's something that also can be explained if someone's looking at your 990 down the road and wants to understand more. Also, I think it's always good. I'm assuming your board is doing this, but it's just best practice for boards to be looking at kind of market analysis about, similar size, similar regions, similar type organizations, and see if it's in line with that. If it's really out of line with that, then that might need to be a policy or something the board works on getting more structure around. But no, kudos to you. Good job. And gosh, like I say, board sees your value and wants to recognize it. Yay to you and yay to them for doing that.
Nonprofit governance.
Nonprofit answers.
Nonprofit board. Nonprofit management.
Nonprofit marketing. Nonprofit resources.
Welcome to Nonprofit Everything, the podcast where hosts Andy Shurick and Stacey Wedding answer your questions about all things nonprofit.
So Stacey, hi everybody. Welcome to the Nonprofit Everything podcast. Stacey and I were just in answering a question. We were talking about table topics.
Yeah.
About when you go someplace and they've got like I don't know, it's usually like cards or something where they just like, or it's like a piece of paper that says, talk to everybody else about this.
Yeah.
So like, what's your favorite table topic you've ever been asked?
Oh, dear Lord. Now you're putting me on the spot, Andy.
Of course I am.
Oh, of course you are. My favorite table topic is something about what is your greatest, like your greatest pet peeve, because it's hysterical how people bond over, like, it sort of shows like the side of you that like many of us don't show, but you're like, oh, my greatest pet peeve is like when people like, chew with their mouth open, like eat food and have their mouth open. Or if that was my answer, right? That isn't my answer necessarily. Right. But like, it's funny just to watch how people react and respond, because I don't think that actually is probably a real table topic, but it's something that I have done when I've interviewed people before in the past. I've been like, what's your greatest pet peeve? Because they don't expect it. And it's amazing how you get a really like real raw answer. So if I could create a table topic, that would be my topic. Yeah. So how about
that
you?
Would be yours. No, I was like, you said that and it reminded me that I think that was one. So the magazine Teen Beat, are you familiar with this one?
Yes.
So in Teen Beat, what they would go and they would ask teen celebrities like a group of questions, and what's your big pet peeve was one of the questions they always asked in Teen Beat.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know you were an avid Teen Beat reader.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas. His pet peeve is car seats that are leaning a little bit too far forward.
Wow.
For some reason, this has been stuck in my head since like 1986. That's a really
random little factoid. So, okay.
And so I'm always just in case he gets in the car with me, I got to make sure that seat is adjusted first, right? Just in case that comes up. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I love that. Oh.
All right. So that's what you're in for here with this episode of Nonprofit Everything is Stacey and I with the random 80s pop culture references. Woohoo. So enjoy. I'm on a nonprofit board, and several other board members have an idea for a new program. They have done preliminary research, but there seems to be a difference of opinion as to whether or not this is an appropriate program for our organization. I'm looking for suggestions to help us evaluate this new idea before we go too far.
Okay, well, cool. I'm glad you're reaching out to us. I wish I could ask you several follow-up questions, but I can't. I mean, I'm curious to know if you have staff. I always get a little bit nervous if you've got staff and the board is coming up with these new program ideas. That makes me a little bit nervous because that's usually more of something that you'll see a staff member maybe do the vetting and sort of propose something for the board's consideration for a brand new program than the opposite way. So if you have staff, then maybe the first step is to loop them in about your ideas and have them do a little research and maybe see if they think any of these are worth their weight, right? So I don't know, Andy, what do you think about that piece? Like just that alone before I dive in more, but like, do you think?
This felt like a total baby nonprofit question, right? This is a tiny little organization that doesn't have staff, which is the only reason the board is having this conversation. Because any organization with even more than a couple of people on staff is going to have someone whose role it is to think about new programs. Might be the executive director, but it's at least somebody who's paid to do it. You're like Stacey. I'm always super nervous when it's like the board had an idea, because my instinct is like, well, tell them to stop that. That's not what we're here for.
I know. I was a little like cringy. So I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that this is a small, like you said, tiny nonprofit working board, like no paid staff or like very limited staffing and whatever, like, and it's a working board who's also trying to govern all at the same time. So, I think basic rules of thumb with things like this are, is this aligned with our mission and where we're headed directionally as an organization, right? Is this completely like off base or like a catch to trying to chase some funding, which sometimes is this weird like dynamic that happens with these things? Is there capacity, right? Is there the human resource power, whether it's the board, volunteers, if you have staff, whatever? Is there like expertise? Is there infrastructure? Is there all the things that go into that? And if not, then what's the cost of ramping up for that, right? For a new program idea, like, and is it worth it, right? Like, what's the, and by saying yes to this, what else are you saying no? Like, what do you have to say no to? Like, what am I missing, Andy, or anything you would add?
So this happens a lot in sort of from my role, like on the CFO side, and it's not necessarily just the board coming up with the ideas, even though that happens. Sometimes it's staff coming up with a program idea. And I have sort of a framework that I use to evaluate whether or not this is a direction that we should go in. And what you said about, does it advance our mission? Is it within are we capable of doing this well? Like, those are all really smart things to decide. On top of that, I like to add, like, recognizing that the inputs and the outputs financially for a nonprofit are disconnected. We talk about that a lot, that the doing a project doesn't make you money from the project. It's not like you're selling something, and so if it doesn't go well, you'll just stop doing it, right? What's happened instead is that you've got a program which usually like a cash outflow. You got to pay for staff, you got to pay for supplies, whatever it is. There's some sort of money that's going to be involved in doing it. So on the other side of the equation, you have to ask, where's the funding for that going to come from? And is that funding something that's going to be ongoing? So if we bring this new program on board, first of all, it's going to take some cognitive demand internally for us to figure out how this thing's going to work. And then potentially we're hiring staff to work on it. We might bring on part-timers. I'm not a big fan of like, hey, we got a grant and it's a year, so we're going to hire you for a year. I think that's a sort of a waste of people. I think because you're bringing somebody on and the whole time they're there, they're number one, either looking for a new job because they know that one's going to end, or they're like hoping that somehow they can figure out a way to parlay this into something permanent, right? So the staff member is not necessarily 100% engaged. And also as an employer, it's not super fair to do that. I mean, if you want to do seasonal work at Target, great, but you sort of understand what that is. A grant funded position is never a great idea, I don't think. So figuring out, do we have donor interest, like identified donor interest that can fund this for the length that this program is going to take, and then compare those two things together. So if it's like, yeah, this is a great idea, but we don't necessarily have anybody identified that's interested in it, we're going to have to chase down money to go get it, or we're going to have to pull out of our operating funds, just our unrestricted money to try to fund this new thing. And then maybe it'll catch some traction and people think it's cool and give us money for it later. To me as a CFO, that feels risky, because then I'm halfway through the program, I'm completely out of cash, and I'm having to make a decision. Well, do we cancel this early and make the people who invested in it mad? Or do we like drain money from some other place to make this thing work out? So I wouldn't call it a business plan, because that's sort of a loaded thing. You don't want to spend all the time writing a whole bunch of stuff down, but you do want to really think about like, how's this going to work financially as well as programmatically? And then those two things together, I don't think one trumps the other. I don't think you can say that if it's the best program in the world, but we can't necessarily figure it out now, that you wouldn't do it, right? That's if it's a fantastic program and you're like, I really do think we can get donors interested in this, like maybe you just delay starting it until you have some of those commitments in hand. But I think you just need to come up with a framework that makes sense, and then just ask yourself from a perspective, is this something that I would invest in? Would I put my own money in this? Can I convince a donor to do this for me? And then I think you're kind of on your way to deciding.
what do you think is the time frame where you start to say this program is successful enough? Because I think the thing that people, however you measure success, whether that's it's probably variables. Are we at least breaking even, like by raising enough money in other ways, like to invest in it? Are we from an impact perspective, and like, are we actually moving the dial? I mean, that stuff takes a while to measure. And so I think what gets hard when you start a new program is trying to figure out, at what point do you pull the plug on it? At what point do you try to work out the kinks? Like, let's say someone's done all the stuff you just mentioned and some of the stuff I mentioned, and they're 3 years in and they're still like struggling a lot. Like, I don't know. Do you have a sense or sort of a way you go about deciding this needs to just go away because it really didn't work?
Yeah, I mean, if it's programmatically a bad idea, I mean, that's easier to decide.
Yeah,
is that you can look at it and you're like, this, we're trying to solve this problem, or trying to get people interested in this thing, and this particular activity isn't moving the dial on that. We thought it was going to get more traction in the community, or whatever the reason was. It's just not working. Maybe we should stop. Right? Yeah. That's one. On the finance side, it's a little bit harder, because then the question is, did we just not execute properly? Are we not asking the right donors? Do we not have the right collateral? Are we downplaying it? Does the donor think that this is a stretch for us and that we're not capable of doing it, so they think it's too risky? Like, you have to think about all those things, and sort of factor that into, or is the program just stupid, right? Is this like, did we think this was great and donors just aren't interested in it because for whatever reason? And I think this is interesting too, is because if like good development people aren't salespeople, they're not there to try to pitch a donor on, this is a great new thing. They're there to talk to the donor and find out what the donor is interested in, and seeing if that dovetails with the programs that the nonprofit's working on. So it's more of a pull than a push.
Yeah.
So if you're pulling the donor in, that means you've got those kind of conversations with folks where you're like, we did this thing, just can I ask? We started this program, we thought it was going to be really great, and we're having trouble getting donors interested in it. Is this, and you haven't donated to this particular cause. You haven't mentioned this as something that you're interested in. I'm wondering if you could let me know why that's not something that I'm curious to see from a donor's perspective, like why this might not be getting traction throughout. And you might get an honest answer. You might get a donor that says, well, I just don't think you're capable of it. Or that doesn't, I hate old people. I don't want to fund anything that has anything to do with old people, like whatever it is. So it could be.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think all these, I'm glad someone's being thoughtful before they just get it ramped up, invest a bunch of money. Because how many times have we seen that where you just go like, oh, someone's got this, wild, they have some dream and they wake up and we're going to start this program. And that always makes me nervous, because it just, I do agree with that sort of idea of some sort of a programmatic plan. We wouldn't, I don't know, would we do that with any other part of our life where we just, maybe some people would, but like.
But, we see it from, you mentioned this at the beginning too, is that a lot of times the pressure comes from not just a board member coming up with a program idea, but a donor coming up with a program idea.
Oh, that's so true.
So it makes it even harder, because now it's like, I will give you this money if you do this thing. And so then it's a lot more difficult to objectively analyze, is there going to be other donor interest, or is this a pet project of this one person who, are they going to fund it forever? Are they just want to seed it and hope other people pitch in? That's a harder conversation for the executive director to have with that donor, which is like, I know you're passionate about this, but it puts us at risk because we have to spend money to start it up. We've got to bring on staff. And if it doesn't get traction in the community, then those staff are gone and we've wasted, your money and some of our time on something that wasn't a great idea to begin with. That's a hard conversation to have.
It really is. And you and I have seen that all too often. I do think that's more typical, a donor idea, or a donor having a lot of different ideas. Not just programmatically. I'm amazed at how many times donors want to give ideas about, even fundraising ideas. And there's a point of, it's like that balance of I've got to be gracious and say thank you, definitely, but we've done the cost benefit analysis. It's a hard, because you don't want to insult them. You don't want them to want them to feel like it's a dumb idea, but it's also like, okay, we're going to do our research just like you would want us. I mean, I think that's the conversation. That's it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like you would want before you invested in something, you'd want to make sure it was well vetted. So let us do that, and then we'll get back to you. But it's still not easy.
And as a CFO, honestly, those were my hardest days. The ones where I had to tell someone that their baby was ugly. It's like, I just got to be, I mean, I still have scars on my shins from getting kicked under the table in donor meetings where the ED just goes, nope. I'm like, I got to be honest. I'm like, this is the only way I operate. I have to tell you what I think is going to be the ultimate outcome of this. And it doesn't feel good to me. And then sometimes we did it anyway. I'm usually right, just so you know.
You know what, though? I do want to also do, I want to make a challenge out there to anybody who might be a donor listening, might be a board member listening. Please, whatever you do in these types of conversations, is entrust staff or entrust whomever is doing the research to do the job, and do your best to not exercise the inherent authority or power you bring by way of your position. I know that's the hardest part, because how many times have I been in a boardroom where I hear a board member come up with something and nobody wants to tick them off, or maybe it's the board member who also is the large donor and nobody wants to tick them off. And so everyone just kind of, even though all the numbers, all the analysis, all the vetting that we're talking about doing don't show it viable, there's enough of we don't want to tick off this person, so we're going to go along with it. And it's the worst. It is so destructive. So anyone listening to this, please, I don't know, take us and put us in the middle of a board meeting or something. Put our little voices there saying this, because please don't do that, With basic cost of living rising so rapidly, I'm hearing through the grapevine that more of our staff are considering second jobs or becoming gig workers to make some extra money. While I rationally understand this, I am worried about conflicts of interest and confidentiality with our organization and the other work they are doing, especially if it is in a similar arena. And I also wonder whether they will be able to give their job with our organization the fullest if they're working around the clock somewhere else. Do you have any guidance on this? And do you know whether other nonprofits allow these types of work arrangements?
So in most places in the US, and this is a state law thing, so you may need to check with sort of what state labor law is you have no control over whether or not the person that works for you has several jobs. You can't tell somebody this is your only job. You're not allowed to do that. And it's also generally not a cause for termination. You can fire somebody for sleeping on the job because they're working two jobs. But you can't fire somebody because you found out that they had a second job, that they're driving Uber all night or whatever. There's not really a whole lot that you can do about it from preventing people from doing it, other than paying them enough to make it so that they don't have to. This is it's hard to do. It's really easy for me to tell you this, right? From the other side of your car radio that yeah. This is, we'll just pay them more. That's the easy, but, that's honestly the solution. And we've been talking about this for years, is that just because you work in nonprofits doesn't mean that you're worth any less. And the folks that you have there are, the reason they're working for you is because they want to get the work done. They want to work for you, or else they'd quit because they could go get more money someplace else doing almost exactly the same thing. I mean, there's plenty of places they could go to make more money than what they're doing for you. So you have to figure out a way to make it worth their while. If they can't afford, and this is really hard in, major urban areas. If you're a nonprofit in New York City, and your employees live in New York City or San Francisco or the Bay Area or Seattle, I mean, this is really hard. It's a really hard thing to do because the cost of living in those major urban areas is so very high. So it's a conversation that you need to have with your board. Maybe you've not done a compensation survey lately to figure out what people should be paid doing this work in your sector that you can then share with your board and say, in Seattle, if you're going to work downtown in Seattle and you're doing this kind of job, this is the wage that you should be able to be paid, or else we're going to lose all these employees, which is going to obviously be bad for the nonprofit. It's a complicated conversation. Like we already have hard time talking about things that aren't directly program service delivery. Like anything that isn't direct program service delivery is automatically more difficult, especially for things like grants and, when you have foundations involved who are just not paying attention to how the sector works. So it's an individual donor conversation. It's also a general fund conversation. Like, can we get unrestricted money in that we can then use to pay people a living wage so that they don't have to spend all their night driving Uber and then have a hard time getting the job done when they're here?
Yeah. I sit there and I'm like, raise a glass to the idea of paying people, a salary that doesn't require them to do something else. But I guess I also want to share the practicality of, I've seen a lot in this sector. I feel like I've heard it more in the last few years than I had ever heard it before, of a lot of these sort of like side gigs or extra, maybe it's a freelance job or whatever it looks like that's happening on the side. And so some of the groups I've talked to have done things like, one of them I think it was like an outside employment policy where, maybe legally they can't enforce this based on what you're saying, Andy, but like they were trying to say, listen, we know this might be a thing. And if it is, like, here's what we ask of you. And like, if your own job performance suffers, right, because of this, just like anything, like whether it's this or anything else, right, we are going to still look at your job performance. You're not going to get like a pass because you had to have a second job. You still have to meet the high standards. Working in language and like a conflict of interest policy, which, that's all formality. I don't know how you actually really enforce it, but sort of like conflict of like, or confidentiality, not like sharing if there is a similar industry, like making sure you're not sharing proprietary info. I mean, how do you control? Yeah, you can have a policy, but like, how do you control that? I think the reality is that's very hard to control. It shows maybe you're serious and maybe it takes people a little more, maybe it makes them think twice before doing it. But I go, that's like hard to enforce. So I don't feel like there's any good answer to this other than, you're right, like paying people more. But
yeah. And conflict of interest is, I think I understand what the question means when we say conflict of interest, is that like maybe if you're doing this same job, like say you're a development person and now you're moonlighting for another organization as a development, maybe that now you've brought your donor file with you. We know that's not how donors work. You can't just like, you're not just like buddies with somebody and they're like, hey, I used to work at this nonprofit and now I work at this new nonprofit. Can you send them money instead? Like, unless it's your mom, like nobody's going to respond to that. Like they're more interested in the mission than they are in you.
You know what? The development piece is an interesting piece. I had a conversation with a friend recently and I felt a little silly because I didn't realize this was a thing. I was sharing with her that I had spoken to someone who is, a chief development officer at a larger organization. And that person said, yeah, they're hired all the time to go help other nonprofits put on their fundraising events. And they're there's no problem. They can't ask for money, but they can help them with the sort of like the coordination and all the pieces that go into putting on an event. And I was surprised by it because, first of all, I was like, how do you have the time to do both well? Because we know what a time suck events can be. But it was funny. This person said to me, oh, Stacey, don't you know, like almost every development director out there has, like many of them have these separate gigs. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. So anyway, have you heard that? This is just like not based in fact at all. I just was sort of a little bit like my jaw dropped and I go, maybe I'm really old school. Like, I feel like that. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about, I mean, it really has to be, I don't know. You hope you have someone with good enough ethics that they're not letting those lines cross, but it makes me a little nervous. So.
I all the time when I was working as a CFO, like I gave out free advice to anybody that would call me. So all the time, So somebody at another nonprofit would meet them someplace and they'd be like, oh my gosh, we're having trouble with our budget. We can't figure this thing out. I just send it to me. Let me look at it and I'll let you know what I think. Right. Yeah. All the time. Because I want nonprofits in general to be better. Yeah. And I learned so much from so many other people. I didn't just pop out of the shell like Aphrodite, right? Like I just know everything. I was born fully grown, right? Like I spent a lot of time asking really smart people really irritating questions. But like, so how do you do that? I don't know how this works. What does that mean? Right? All the time. And I feel like now that I've gotten to the point where I think I pretty much know what I'm doing, like I like to share that information. I do. I mean, while I was still a CFO, I did conferences all the time where I do presentations at conferences. I taught classes at the university on like nonprofit finance because it was like, I need to get this information out there. I've got my brain that I would like to share all of these things that I've learned from other people with this new group of people coming up that's interested in doing this. I did that all the time. Most of it I didn't get paid for. So that's just me being not very smart, but it's still like that for me. And I say that all the time. Anytime I'm with a group of nonprofit folks, I always lead with everybody in this room is your friend. You are not in competition with each other. Even if you're all development folks working for different organizations, you are not going after the same donors because you do not have identical missions. You may get money from the same people directly, but you're not in competition with each other. And you should be fully empowered to call or email or text anybody in this room with any question at all and start to help each other out as a sector. This is one of the only sectors where we leave that resource on the table, where we just think, like, well, it's like competition. It's like business, but it isn't. We're actually all rowing the boat the same direction, and we all need to kind of help out with each other. And the way I always phrase it too is think about it. If someone called you and asked you a question, would you say, go away? Or would you say, let me help you with that, right? If it's a nonprofit related. And 95% of people would be like, oh yeah, if I can help, I will totally help. And just remember that because you think that, most likely everybody else thinks that too. And I have never in my entire career been irritated when someone calls me and asks me a question that I think is stupid. Like can you please explain depreciation again? I just don't get it. It's really confusing. Why do we have to do it? Right. I'll spend a half an hour on the phone with you explaining what that is, agreeing with you that it's stupid and we shouldn't have to do it, but I'll explain to you why it's there and how to do it. Right. No problem.
It's so true. Plus, I also think sometimes there's this hidden opportunity that comes with that sort of collaboration and using sort of the brain trust in a room. I've seen it happen more than once, and it's been super cool where you see two development professionals and they get to know each other and their missions more. They lean on each other for support. And then one of them gets a donor that isn't the right fit, just isn't the right fit for that mission. And that person then says, I actually think I think you really should meet this other organization and this other person because I actually think they're more aligned. And that happens more than we talk about in a sector, where if you're truly looking at it in the long game, the community aspect of it, the fact that philanthropy doesn't have to be stingy or deficit based, right? But that if we ramp up and build others, we build ourselves and our own organizations. And I've seen that story happen more than once. And that comes from what we're talking about of just sort of that sharing, the getting to know other people. So I'm really glad you just mentioned that, Andy, even though we probably just got a little off topic from what
we're so off topic.
We have answered
a completely other question.
We go on this little rambling, but I think we sort of answered it. And, I guess at the end of the day, let's try to figure out how we get your organization more money so you can pay people more so you don't have to worry about this whole moonlighting thing. So
yeah, do that.
All right, everybody, we hope you got some laughs, some smiles, and maybe a nugget of information or two after listening to this week's episode of Nonprofit Everything. As you know, we're on every other week, and we are based on all your questions. So the questions that we answered today came in from people just like you, and we always want more. So we're going to be greedy and say more, more, more. So there you go. Send us your questions. You can find us on the socials on, at nonprofiteverything.com. There's the big ask a question button or questions at nonprofiteverything.com email. And, you can always track down Andy or me as well in other ways. And we will make sure your question is asked and answered. So thanks for being with us.